Hello and welcome. It is the season finale of Inside the 605. This is episode number 13. We've been with you all throughout the fall. It is championship week in South Dakota high school football.
Where has the time gone? And for these seniors, same thing. Where has the time gone for them? They're going to end the season regardless on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, and we're going to end our season tonight.
Absolutely. But we have a jam-packed show, all the breakdowns, all the matchups. We'll give you our picks. Spoiler alert, I once again beat you in picks.
For whatever that's worth.
In the semifinals.
7-0 coming up.
I got 10 of the 14. You got 8 of the 14. But there were a couple.
That may be the worst I have ever done, by the way. And I think I paid more attention this year than most years.
Ignorance is bliss, apparently.
I guess.
There were a couple we did definitely get wrong. Both of us got wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Nevertheless, you guys have been picking them. Here are our current scores. As you can see, I am much better than Jandy by 20 some odd points. However, neither of us at the top of the leaderboard because in our infinite wisdom and lack of preparation, we did not pick the All Nations bracket.
Right,
so,
and that was key.
Yes, we are permanently below this leaderboard. Mr. Deal is number 5 right now.
Yep, and somebody named All Knowing, he must be very competent to have a name like that. Wow.
And whoever you are, TJW, I'm assuming that's an acronym for your first, middle, and last name, but you currently have a 4-point lead entering championship weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Stuff could change around really quickly here in the next few days. Who knows?
But you know what never changes? Brownie Points.
That's right.
We've had them all season long. These are the sweetest of them all. We'll start number 1. Never underestimate the heart of a champion. How about Pierre?
Why were we underestimating them in the middle of the year, Dave?
Because they lost 4 games in a row. That's why.
Early in the year, I said, don't give up on them. And then I gave up on them. And then they started winning.
Oh, my goodness. 14-9 in a thriller over Yankton. Ironically, they scored on the second play of the game and the second to last play of the game. Caleb Lounsbury to Carter Scheifelbein for 58 yards early on. Then Yankton came back, 9-7, and then it was basically a punt fest in the second half. Pierre got one final drive. Elijah Bucci scores with 8 seconds left.
And there was just this grit and determination from Pierre that I haven't seen, in a long time. They really wanted to make sure they got this done on the defensive side. They shut down Easton Miller and the rest of the Yankton Bucks. And you're right, E.J. Bucci came up huge on that last drive. He was not going to be denied. This is a young team, and they have really showed me something here down the stretch.
You mentioned past shows, some guys switched positions. They went more run-heavy this year, probably than they have in the past, and it's paid off for them. And you look at someone like George Sally with a big interception in the red zone of Yankton early in that ball game. Just different guys making plays.
Exactly, and you're right. The position thing, Steve Steele said, there's only 3 players on one side of the ball that have started every game and 3 on the other side of the ball. And of those 6 people, I think only 2 of them have started in the exact same position all season long. That shows you the number of injuries that they've had to go through and the growing pains that they've had to go through this year. But they have come out stronger.
And the defense just stepped up late when they needed them to. Not only, obviously, getting the ball back with enough time to make that game-winning drive, but I mentioned the interception. They also stopped Yankton at the 2-yard line at one point. Evan Sirk got a touchdown. Kevin Ortiz got a field goal for Yankton, but that was honestly about it. We kind of alluded to Yankton not playing their best against Aberdeen Central, but they didn't need to. Here, this was a winnable game for Yankton, and they were clearly the best 11AA team in the second half of the regular season. But come this game against Pierre, I don't know what it was, because this is a Pierre team that they beat 35-7 earlier this year on their field.
Well, both coaches said it was going to come down to the trenches, and I watched as much of that game as I could. And in the trenches, Pierre has improved dramatically since the beginning or since the middle of the season. And that, to me, that's where they won this football game, is in the trenches. And they were able to get to not only Evan Sirk, but get to the quarterback to prevent them from making big plays.
So Pierre will officially be going for an 8-peat on Friday against Watertown. Brownie point number 2, not going to brag. Okay, I'm going to brag a little bit. I called Woolsey Wessington.
You called it.
Over Wall. Now, to be fair, they very nearly blew it at the very end. They led this game 22-0 at halftime. Wall scores 28 unanswered. And
I
then
couldn't believe it. I was watching the scores throughout the night, and I said, well, I got that one wrong. And then I looked, and somebody told me they're tied. At one point, they were tied, I think, in that game.
Yep.
And Wall, they really put up a fight.
Absolutely they did. Jace Blazes had a touchdown run. Tanner Vollmer had a touchdown run. Jace Moore had a touchdown run. After an onside kick recovery, Vollmer had another run. So Wall, they executed about as well as they could for trailing by 22 points at halftime. But then Woolsey drives down, and Caleb Richmond gets the tying touchdown. He cramps up, so Moshe Richmond has to do the 2-point conversion. He gets it 30-28.
Just watching that in real time or hearing about it in real time, it was amazing what the Richmond brothers did. They were such a focus of this team, and for them to combine for the game winner like that was kind of crazy.
Remember, they had that 2-point win against Kimball White like late in the regular season. And I said that was one of the reasons I liked them, just in terms of being able to play close games. They get a 2-point win here. I mentioned the Richmonds. I mentioned how they've been consistent all season long. Caleb, 179 passing, 104 rushing, and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's really hard to stop those two. And we talked about having other options. They had other options too, but those two guys together are really hard to beat.
That they are. Colin Hughes had a touchdown reception for Wolsey Wessington as well, so they advance to the 9A title game where they will face Howard. Third brownie point, Lennox. This was what you called. So
that's right. I got that one right.
You got that one right. I got that one wrong. So Del Rapids in the regular season finale wins 26-12 at Lennox. And then in the semifinals, Lennox 35-0 over Del Rapids. We have talked all season about the Oriole offense. I did not see a shutout by the Oriole defense coming.
I don't think many did, but I will tell you what. When Sean Flanagan, their head coach, talked to me or communicated with me, he said, if we execute, we did not execute the first time. If we execute, and I'm sure they hammered that home, that they are really, really tough to beat, especially on that offensive side. And everybody goes in with a game plan against the Orioles. And the game plan breaks down as soon as Boston Katzer buys extra time and finds one of his 3 or 4 guys who he can throw to. That's a huge luxury to have, not only Katzer, but those receivers.
This game ends up 35-0. It was scoreless at halftime.
Right.
It was 0-0. You mentioned Boston Katzer. What's helped the Oriole offense? Mixing in the run.
Curtis had a big
Ramsey
game, too.
Williams. You mix in Boston Katzer, and then you look at the defense. Not just the shutout. They held Del Rapids to 85 rushing yards.
Yeah, the defense gets probably the least press of anybody in the championship games because we think about that offense so much for the Orioles, but the defense came to play against a good Del Rapids team. They found a way to keep Cole Rusink contained all night long.
So the Orioles avenge a regular season loss to Del Rapids. Now they'll have a chance to avenge their other regular season loss against Sioux Falls Christian in the Class 11A championship. That's going to be very interesting.
Can't wait.
Absolutely. And a couple of bonus brownie points. Just want to shout out Pine Ridge, Lower Brule, your All-Nations 9A and 9B championship winners. Congrats to them, especially to Pine Ridge, one of their first team championships.
Pine Ridge, that game was awesome, by the way. And then Lower Brule to get the three-peat like that. And they've really become a football school. And over the years, we've thought of them just as a basketball school. So the All-Nations Conference doing some great things and some teams really stepping up.
Yeah, Pine Ridge, that was a thriller. 42-40 over Winnebago. And again, Pine Ridge, first team championship of this kind. Congratulations to them. And again, to Lower Brule for the three-peat, recognizing the great All-Nations football that we've seen over the past couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. And just shout out to all those guys who deserved it.
Absolutely. So, you probably had a lot to talk about with Ryan Deal this week.
A lot more than usual. He did go watch Parkston last week, Parkston and Freeman. Talked a little bit about that, but then he had to narrow it down to just a couple games that he picks that he wants to talk about. He chose the 2 games that feature undefeated teams going against each other. I won't spoil the rest, but here's my talk with Ryan Deal on The Real Deal. Welcome to another edition of The Real Deal, here with Ryan Deal, who's doing really well in the picks so far. Ryan, how are you doing, and how are you getting all these right?
Well, I don't know if it's going to last. I know I was in the lead at one point. Some other people have jumped ahead of me, and as we head to the finals, we'll see how it shakes out. But I'm not feeling too confident as I was maybe last week about this time with some of these picks and everything. But it's still fun to be involved and do that kind of stuff. So I believe we had 623 people that had entries in the 605 Sports Pickup Challenge. So a lot of interest and certainly fun to see how that stuff shakes out.
That has been a lot of fun for sure. And keep up the good work. We'll see how you do. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to dive in. But before we do that, let's just talk about the semifinal round. Always such a fun night of football, just in general. This was one of the best nights we've had in football in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking, beforehand. This semifinal night in general is just so much fun. Whenever the teams make the dome, they're there. There's just kind of a relief from the teams that make it there. But there's something about semifinal night that's just so special. Those teams are just all knocking at the door to make it to the Dakota Dome, and it usually lives up to the hype. And this last week, it certainly did. 7 games decided by 6 points or less. And there were a couple other games that were right there, but kind of got away from some teams at the end. So semifinal night is always certainly one that in the media we really look forward to. And this last Friday certainly lived up to the hype.
Now we could talk about any of these games, but let's just focus on a couple here. In 9-man football, we've got Parkston against Hamlin. First of all, what did you see from Parkston last week? You were at the game against Freeman, and what do you see in this matchup between Parkston and Hamlin?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this one. They played last year in the semifinals, Parkston and Hamlin. Parkston won that one 26-3, but last year Parkston was just kind of on another level as they won the 9AA championship. So certainly looking forward to this one. Athletes on both sides of the field and everything. Some explosive athletes and some defense. When you get to this point of the season, you got to be able to rely on your defense. So this will certainly be fun to see how it plays out. But yeah, I watched Parkston last week play Freeman Marion, Freeman Academy. That was a game where the Trojans got up 28-8, and you thought that was it. But you got to give props to the Phoenix. Hung around and got some touchdowns late that made it really interesting. Ended up being 28-22. But Parkston, they still hang their hat on their defense, and they were able to make some stops there at the end to seal that game.
That one's for sure going to be a lot of fun. In 11-man football, another one that promises to be good. The other battle of unbeatens that we have coming up this weekend, Sioux Valley taking on Winter. And Sioux Valley is a team that's been knocking on the door for a long time, but they haven't gotten to the dome in a long time. And you did a little story on that on on 605sports.com.
Yeah. Anybody that knows me, kind of follows me, knows I really, I'm kind of a history buff. I like to dig through archives and look up some of the old school stuff and post a lot of the old school stuff. And Sioux Valley, first time they made the dome since 1988. So automatically I jumped on a story about that and talked to a few former players, one of them being Brad DeBeer, who is a familiar name in South Dakota. He's a coach and athletic director and does some media type stuff. So that was a fun one to really dig into, to talk about that championship run for the Cossacks in 1988. But now this current Cossacks team, they're going to have a tough one against Winter. For Winter, this is nothing new for those guys making it to the Dakota Dome. They're always getting there, or they're always making deep runs into the playoffs. But this is certainly one, I think, as the season was kind of playing out in 11B. There's so many good teams in 11B. But I just think kind of in the back of our minds, I think we all kind of anticipating maybe this one was going to be the matchup at the Dome, Sioux Valley and Winter, a couple teams on opposite sides of the state. But it'll be a fun matchup. I think they size up well. They're both going to rely on their running game. They've just got some dynamic running backs that really on both sides of the field and everything. So I anticipate this being kind of a traditional 11B. Old school, run the ball, maybe the first to get to 20s kind of a game. So that'll obviously be one to really watch.
So much good stuff. Ryan, you've also been putting out some good stories. Gavin Colston from Sully Buttes, you did a little feature on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Gavin Colston, junior at Sully Buttes. And, it's the cliche, multi-sport athlete. You always hear that about these kids and some of the stuff that they do away from sports. And Gavin is certainly, fits the description for that. I mean, he does four sports, state champion golfer. He decided to do some bowling here a few years ago, and he rolled a couple 300 games. He's a singer. He's in the band. He performs at local events around the Oneida area. So just an outstanding young man that does a lot of things on the field, and a bunch of sports, and certainly away from the athletic side of things and everything. So that was certainly a fun story to do and profile, and people can check that out on 605sports.com.
Check that out and so much more good content from 605sports.com. And of course, the coverage continues throughout this weekend with write-ups on all the football championship games, and next week with volleyball coming up as well. All kinds of good stuff. Brian, once again, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for joining us all season long.
Absolutely. We'll see you at the Dome, Jason.
That Gavin Colson is quite versatile, if he can do all of those.
I love it. I love it. Always good stories on 605sports.com. Ryan Deal does an excellent job with those. And like I just said in the conversation, there'll be a lot of write-ups and a lot of stats and stories over the next couple of days.
That they will. And speaking of Gavin Colson and Sully Buttes, the Wheel of Justice is here, but we're going to wait till the end to do it. We are going to go in order of the championships as they are being played Thursday through Saturday. So we start Thursday with 9B, conveniently already placed there.
Morning football.
Absolutely. So, quick recap of the semifinals. The 5-8 matchup, which everyone expected, 34-28 Sully Buttes over Canastota. Easton Miller had 3 touchdowns for the Hawks, but Wesley Whitler was unreal for Sully Buttes.
He was as good as he's been all season long. Yeah, he is a guy that is a game changer. What do you have? 3 touchdowns, I believe.
3 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns.
2 passing touchdowns, yep. So Whitler stepping up in a big way. Gavin Barber also was able to play even more on offense than he has all season long.
3 receptions, 106 yards, and a touchdown for Mr. Barber. Sully Buttes held off a late drive by Canastota. They actually led this game 28-12 at halftime, did Sully Buttes. Held them off. In the end, 34-28. Tip of the cap to Canastota, though. We talked about them all season. For being a new 9B school, they still play such a tough schedule. Great season for the Hawks, but it is Sully Buttes advancing, where they will play Fulton area. I picked El Rapids St. Mary's. You picked Fulton. And Fulton honestly just went up early and never looked back at this one.
That's where I think it really came down to the trenches. Their line really moved St. Mary's out of the way, and St. Mary's has been so good on defense this year, but they just leaned on him, and in the second half, it was all Fulton.
Yeah, Tristan Balloon, 5 rushing touchdowns, 134 yards, 8 tackles, 2 sacks. Talk about versatile. Tristan Balloon had a whale of a game.
Yeah, he's versatile. He can run the football. He's so good on the defensive side of the ball. He can receive it. That's definitely a guy to watch out for on Thursday morning.
All right, Thursday morning, as you mentioned, early morning football. Number 5 Sully Buttes at 10-1 versus number 2 Fulton area at 9-2. And this is one of the rare matchups. They met in the regular season on September 27th in Week 4. Fulton won this game 28-8 at Sully Buttes.
Yeah, this was a game where it was a big test for both the teams at the time. Sully Buttes started out the season out of the rankings. This would have legitimized them, after that perfect start that they had. They couldn't get it done, but then, they did anything that a good team would do. They took the mistakes that they made against Fulton and turned it around, and they turned it up over the last 4 games. This is a team that probably bottomed out right here for Sully Buttes this season, but have been playing really well since then.
6 wins in a row since that loss in late September. I mentioned Tristan Balloon. Him and Landon Coyle had 241 combined rushing yards in that game. Sully Buttes, they were able to get some quick passes to get up and down the field, but couldn't sustain that enough in this game.
Exactly, and this is a game where Gavin Barber was not 100% for Sully Buttes. He is back this game, but don't cry about injuries because a guy like Spencer Melius started out the year as the Fulton area quarterback, and the first game he was hurt, and Gian DiMaria has come in and done a phenomenal job at quarterback, a guy who wasn't even projected to be the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year. He's thrown for 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns.
He had only 5 completions in their semifinal victory. All of them went to Charlie Dieter, though, just the versatility. Dieter had a great championship game last year in the loss against Avon. And then we talked about Wesley Whitler for Sully Buttes. Caden Westergren, we've kind of hovered in terms of mentioning him, but you look at his numbers,
Yeah.
he's also excellent on the ground.
You know, he's one, as Gavin Barber gets more work, Westergren's going to get less work, but Westergren is clutch on defense to see the 4 sacks there. So they've got a couple different weapons that can run the ball. Whitler obviously can. Barber definitely can. Westergren can. For Faulkton, they rely on Landon Coyle and Tristan Balloon to get their offensive yards, and they've been getting huge chunks this year because their line has been so good. Probably underrated. We don't talk about 9-man lines very much. Faulkton has one of the best 9-man lines.
Just because of the nature of being a 9B program, you have only about 20, 30 kids on your team at most.
At most, yeah.
So to get good line play is something that's obviously a tremendous asset for Faulkton area. For both these teams, it could end an interesting slide. Sully Buttes is 1 and 5, so they're technically 1 for 6 all time in state championships. They're 0-2 in 9B. Their only championship win in Class 9A in 1989 over Garrettson, 40-12. Faulkton, meanwhile, 0-4 in state championship games.
Yeah.
They lost the very first year of the Dome Championships in 1981 and in 1998, both to Freeman. Lost in 2014 to Hamlin, and they lost last year to Avon. So Sully Buttes will either get its first championship since 1989, or Faulkton will get its first state title ever.
That's really cool. And we've talked about how 9B has had different champions over the last 6 years, I believe, and hasn't had a repeat since
Kimball in 03 and 04.
Kimball in 03, 04. But it's been a different champion the last few years. We're going to get a different champion again because Sully Buttes and Faulkton area, 2 teams we thought were pretty good coming into the year, but have overachieved for sure. And this Faulkton area team comes in probably as a little bit of a favorite just because they beat him in the regular season. But to me, it just comes down to line of scrimmage play. And Sully Buttes is peaking right now because Gavin Barber is at his best.
All right, let us make our championship picks. I will let you go first.
Well, this Sully Buttes team has got one of the best playmakers in Wes Whitler for sure. He's done a nice job of just getting the team into positive situations, making big plays at quarterback. He's probably the biggest play guy in this matchup, and sometimes I favor that. But in this game, I favor Faulkton area because they do have a better line on both sides of the ball, offensively, defensively. I think they're going to win the line of scrimmage. They've got 2 backs who can run it, and Charlie Dieter played a big role last year. He's back to play a big role this year. Give me the Faulkton area in a close one.
I was also tempted to take Sully Buttes just because of the play of Wes Whitler over the past couple of weeks. Usually, I like to look at the players who are really peaking, especially when it's clutch time, when it's clutch situations. I just think the overall team of Faulkton and the depth of Faulkton is better. I think the ground game is going to be the difference, not just because of the trenches, but because of the combination of Tristan Balloon and Landon Coyle. Dieter can be a factor both in the run and the pass game. And the other thing, I think a lot of these kids know the sting of losing to Avon last season. I think that's going to motivate them. No one on the Sully Buttes team has been in a championship game before, so for those reasons, I'm also going to take Faulkton area in this one.
I mean, we could see this going either way, but both of these 9B teams are pretty balanced for 9B teams.
For sure.
You've got teams that can throw or pass, and sometimes if you get the passing game going in the Dome, you get a little momentum, you can really light that place up. And I could see Wesley Whitler doing that more than I could see Faulkton doing that. But Faulkton, I think, is just going to eat up the clock.
Absolutely. And you look at Balloon, 5 touchdowns in that semifinal game on the ground. I just think that experience and those factors, as you mentioned, in terms of the depth of the line and the depth of the ground game, give Faulkton area the victory in this one. So we are both taking Faulkton. So now we will move on. Got to go one up. It's a little unorthodox this year. 9AA, if it stays, is the next one. So you called Marion Freeman Academy to win over Parkston, and they made it close, and they made it very, very interesting. Parkston had a big lead, but Marion Freeman Academy nearly came all the way back.
They did. They got a safety during the game. They had a big fourth quarter. Parkston, after the game, talked about how maybe they let up just a little bit, and did enough to secure the win, though. That was key. Parkston still hasn't lost in 2 years, and they're riding high with Coulter Kramer and the rest of this group.
Coulter Kramer had 104 rushing yards. Mason Jervik had a punt return in the second half and later a rushing touchdown. That made it 28-8. Dominic Sperling for the Phoenix had a couple touchdown runs in the fourth quarter. They got within 6, but couldn't quite get over the hump. So Parkston will get a chance to defend their 9AA championship. Hamlin, Elton
What a
Lake
game.
Benton, 2016, a lot less scoring than the last one. But Hamlin did it despite a key injury in this game.
Yeah, and I don't have a lot of information on how that injury will play out for this next week. So I'm sure some of you at home know more about that than we do. But Jackson Wadsworth had to miss part of the game because of an injury.
Dislocated his non-throwing shoulder, according to the write-up in the Watertown paper. Did not return. Evan Stormo took over quarterback. He had a touchdown in the second. Elton Lake Benton had a couple of long Colt Beck touchdown passes. Yet, despite the Wadsworth injury, Hamlin defense held strong. They stopped Elton Lake Benton inside the 10-yard line with less than a minute to go.
Exactly. That one came right down to it. And of all the offense we talk about between these two teams, it was a defensive stand by Hamlin to get the W. And they played a really heck of a good game against a heck of a good team.
And so now we get an unbelievable matchup. Two undefeated teams, 11-0 Hamlin, 11-0 Parkson. They have been the top two teams in 9AA all season long. They have not deviated. The last time they met was in last year's semifinals. 26-3, Parkston beat them November 3rd, 2023.
Yeah, and a lot of these Hamlin guys were on that team. They were starters on that team, whereas Parkston has a couple guys back from last year, but they've got some of those new players. You talked about Mason Jervik and the new Jadozi coming up, who weren't huge parts of last year's team. So you can't glean a lot off of that, but they did just play last year.
Absolutely, they did. Hamlin, 5-5 overall in the state championship, 0-1 in 9AA. They've obviously bounced between classes over the years. They won 3 straight 11B titles in the late 80s and early 90s. Their last championship was 9B over Fulton back in 2014. Parkston, meanwhile, looking to go back-to-back, trying to be the first 9AA team to go back-to-back since Platte Geddes did it in 2020 and 2021.
And that's definitely a possibility. This Parkston team is loaded. They're ever since the beginning of the season, head coach Matt Graves said, we have got to get our younger guys to step up. Well, they have stepped up in a big way this year. You've got Kramer and Summer, who they relied on last year, and then Mason Jervik has stepped up. Caden Holzbauer has stepped up. I talked about the young Jadozi has stepped up. This is a really good, hard-hitting, strong Parkston team. But this Hamlin team is just continued to get better ever since last year's loss to Parkston.
Evan Stormo obviously stepping up big in that semifinal game, taking the place of the injured Wadsworth. We know what Mason Trowbridge can do. We know what Zach Van Meteren can do. We've been hyping up these veterans for the Chargers all season long.
Yeah, Evan Stormo has been huge on their team. He was 5 for 9 throwing the ball last week, so they're confident in letting Stormo throw. But here's a look at some of the Parkston players. Coulter Kramer, whenever they need a big play, that's the guy that they're going to. He has definitely been the leader, maybe the true definition of an MVP in 9-man football. He is really the focal point on this Trojan team.
As you mentioned, Parkson has won 22 games in a row. Hamlin, meanwhile, is looking for their first state championship in 10 years. Parkson, as I mentioned, trying to go back-to-back. Obviously, one of the key factors is, 1, will Wadsworth play? And 2, if he does play, how effective he will be. Again, the report was dislocated his non-throwing shoulder. Right. So, hypothetically, if it gets popped back in, a little rehab, he might be good to go, but of course, we're just speculating at this point.
Yeah. I literally don't know how that's going to handle. And I think Evan Stormo would be fine at quarterback, but that's one less weapon for them on the outside. And of course, Evan Stormo has had an unbelievable year receiving the football. He has been their major player on not only running the ball when he needs to, but catching the ball. So, there's a ripple effect that goes with Jackson Wadsworth not being able to play.
All right, one of these teams is going to lose their first game of the year, and one of these teams is going to be an undefeated state champion. I will go first with my pick. I had Hamlin in my bracket, and then I reconsidered based on the Wadsworth injury, but I'm going to stick with my intuitions and still go with Hamlin for a couple of reasons. 1, like you said, Evan Stormo can do just fine at quarterback when they need him to. 2, winning that game against Elton Lake Benton, despite losing your quarterback for pretty much most of the game, he didn't play the last 3 quarters, shows the depth that I've been talking about for the Chargers all season long. Coulter Kramer has more experience in a championship game, but I just think Hamlin's been on a mission all season long, and I just like the depth of their guys. And never underestimate the power of, even if Wadsworth's playing, trying to do it for your teammate, knowing that he's done so much all season long, rallying around him whether he plays or not. I think Hamlin gets it done no matter what.
I wish I was as confident as you just sounded right there, David. This game could go either way, but all season long, from the very first vote all the way through, I've been giving Hamlin #1 votes because I do think they have the most talented team. And they were tested by a very good Elkton Lake Benton team, even with, like you said, without their primary quarterback, and still got it done. Both teams were tested, but I think Hamlin, they haven't played as tough a schedule, but they've beaten better teams here coming down the stretch. So I like Hamlin as well in this game. And I know Parkson already hates me, so they can continue to hate me. And maybe that's just the fuel that you guys needed, Nobody believes in you, Parkson.
Oh, it's not that we don't believe in them.
No, we do. I love you guys at Parkson.
All right, take a snapshot of Jandy, print it out, put it on a dartboard, and you can put my face on there too.
Yeah, that's true. He picked Hamlin.
I also picked Hamlin.
That's why not many people in Parkston enjoying this part of the show.
We still have love for you, Parkston. We really do.
We really do.
Yeah, we're just making a pick.
Simple
no
picks.
judgment.
We get them wrong all the time.
Yes, especially you. But in this
me.
case, I hope we're both right.
It's very true.
So that goes through the 9-man championships on Thursday. We're both taking Faulkton in 9B, and we're both taking Hamlin in 9AA. So we move to Friday.
Back to 9A.
Back to 9A. And going over the semifinals there, again, the one that I thought could happen, almost didn't, then it did. Wolsey Wessington over #1 Wall, 30-28. We already discussed it in Brownie Points. Just an insane game, and it was the factor that I thought might make a difference. Wolsey Wessington has played close games. Wall had been in nothing but blowouts all season long. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason Wall lost, but having that experience, Wolsey Wessington might have been a little calmer in that situation.
You kind of are saying that, Dave.
I suppose I am.
You kind of are saying
I'm trying to tiptoe around it.
But you know what? Congratulations. I think Wall has overachieved, earning a #1 seed this year with a reloaded lineup, getting this far and playing a really good Wolsey Wessington team, only losing by 2. So no shame in that, Wall. But yes, congrats to Wolsey Wessington. In the other game, a battle of undefeateds, and this one started out close, Dave.
This was a 13-13 game in the fourth quarter. That final score is not indicative of how close this game was through the first 36 minutes of this game. Josiah Baum had 131 rushing yards and a touchdown for Warner. But Howard, 27 points in the fourth quarter, and in the game they forced 6 turnovers.
That has been one of the things that Howard has done in multiple games this year, is get the ball, and they've won the turnover battle time and time again. And it ended up being the key factor in this one.
Tate Miller had 79 rushing yards and a pick 6. Lucas Feldhaus had 2 rushing touchdowns and a pick 6 as well, doing it on both sides. So that gives us this matchup on Friday morning for the 9A championship. #4 Wolsey Wessington at 10-1 against #2 and undefeated Howard at 11-0. They have not played each other in a long time. Their last matchup was the 2021 quarterfinal, so it's been 3 years. Howard won that game 46-6 on October 28th, 2021. So not a whole lot of familiarity between these two.
Yeah, but they're both used to playing tough schedules and playing against really good teams. It's just different, though. Howard is a different team, and if you don't have familiarity with them, it is tough because they can hand the ball off to 2 or 3 different players at any given time, and they come at you from so many different angles on the defensive side. You see right there, making those takeaways against Warner. That's a tough scheme to play against in Pat Rummel's defense.
And that defense is going to be tested with the Richmonds. We've seen Caleb throw it to Moshe countless times this season. We've seen both of them take it either on direct snaps or on handoffs. Again, we mentioned, other guys for Wolsey Wessington, but the Richmonds are the straw that stir the drink.
Exactly, and I know, talking to Pat Rummel this week, his full focus is stopping not only the quarterback, but Moshe Richmond. And Caleb Richmond is a special athlete. He not only can run for the first down if he needs to, he can find his brother, or he can find a multitude of other guys that he can get the ball to when he's doing, one of those drills where everything breaks down and he just makes something happen.
Both these teams have some recent championship history, but when you look at these numbers, we talked about Caleb and Moshe. Peyton Rainford, we mentioned him, I think, a couple weeks ago. He had a really good game on the ground, I believe, in their quarterfinal victory. And then for Howard, you mentioned just the depth. We've barely mentioned Weston Remmers and Luke Kepsel.
Yeah, Luke Kepsel's, I would say, the defensive player of the year in 9AA. He has been a monster defensively, and he's a red zone target. Those 7 touchdowns he's caught, I mean, if they're close to the end zone, they go upstairs, find Luke Kepsel. Same thing on 2-point conversions. He's been a killer on 2-point conversions this year. But yeah, whether it's Becker, Remmers, or Miller, they're finding a way to run the ball down the field.
Both these teams actually have some recent championship history. Wolsey Wessington is 2-1 all time in the Dome, 1-1 in 9A. They won the 9AA championship in 2015. They won the 9A championship in the COVID year of 2020. Meanwhile, Howard, they are 4-3 all time at the Dakota Dome, 2-1 in 9A. Remember, they won the 9A championship in 2021, lost the 9AA championship last year to Parkston, moved back down to 9A, and they are back at the Dome in a different class.
Yeah, these are two teams that are familiar. I mean, it's been too long for Wolsey Wessington. They've been out 3 years. Like it seems like they were on almost every year, every other year for a while there in the late teens, but now have a really good group back for the 24 championship.
All right, Wolsey Wessington and Howard, what is your pick?
This Howard team is unique. You've got Pat Rummel, who's been a dominant coach. Interestingly, 5 of his 7 assistants played for Howard at one point, and 3 of them he actually coached, and 2 of them were on that 2009 championship team. So this is a homegrown group of coaches that know what it's like to play Howard Tiger football, and they keep recharging with the same different guys, same results every year. And I think they're going to have a close game through 3 quarters like they have several times this year and pull away in that 4th quarter, much like they did against Warner last week. Give me Howard.
Wolsey Wessington's upset over Wall made me think about them just because of close games. Howard, similarly, not a ton of close games this year, but championship medal and experience. They've got kids on this team who were in the Dome last year, who know the pain of losing, even though it was a different class and they lost a close game 12-7 to Parkston. I just think that defense right now is playing out of its mind for Howard. I mean, it's unreal. You force 6 turnovers in a semifinal game. I think the Richmonds are going to get some points. I think that Wolsey Wessington will probably get a couple of touchdowns, if not more. But in terms of the overall all-around performance, I like Howard as well.
Yeah, and a great run by Wolsey Wessington, and maybe some of the best talent that they've had. Caleb, just a junior. Moshe is a senior this year. So they're going to ball out. They're going to leave it all out on the Dome floor for sure.
All right, so we agree on all of our 9-man picks. Falkton in 9B, Hamlin in 9AA, Howard in 9A.
I'm surprised we differed, or we didn't differ in 9AA. I thought you were going to pick Parkston.
I thought about it, but again, we have to apparently keep the ire of Parkston fans up in some way, somehow. By the way, we're moving on to 11-man championships. You can still hashtag Ask Jandy anything if you want to ask questions, or if you just enjoy us talking about the state championships, that's fine too. But now we move on. 11B. We are in the 11-man ranks now. Sioux Valley and Elk Point Jefferson, 28-14. The Cossacks dominated that second half to win that ball game.
Yeah, they were down 7-0 to start the game out. Had a couple of long drives. They didn't get the big explosive plays from Donovan Rose that they did the first time they played EPJ, but they did get Brock Christopherson, who shoved the ball into the end zone every time they got close.
If you remember last week, I said it was kind of a pick your poison, Rose or Christopherson, and I theorized that Christopherson might have the big game. Rose had more yards,
correctly,
but Christopherson had more touchdowns. Christopherson, 23 carries, 123 yards, 3 touchdowns. Donovan Rose, by his standards, a quote-unquote pedestrian, 30 carries, 218 yards, and a touchdown. They account for all 4 touchdowns. Keaton Gale had a touchdown pass to Grayson Gerard. Bo Schmitz had an 8-yard touchdown run for EPJ. But Elk Point Jefferson, this is a team that has really showed something over the past 3 years. They won a championship against Winter. They beat Winter last year in the semifinals. It's a team that is consistently good and now among the perennial contenders in 11B. No shame in losing to Sioux Valley. They will be back and better than ever next year.
And their freshman and sophomore classes are really good. So get them now, and they're going to be trouble the next couple of years.
Winter and St. Thomas More. St. Thomas More, the darlings, the Cinderella as the 11 seed. 36-0. Winter shut down and shut out a team that was averaging nearly 40 points a game. Unreal.
And again, the game started out really close. It was 0-0 for a while. Winter found a way to punch one in. but didn't really take over the game until second half.
Absolutely. 36-0 is your final. So we get another undefeated matchup. Number 2 winner at 11-0. Number 1 Sioux Valley at 11-0. This one Friday afternoon at the Dakota Dome. The last time these two teams played, again, it's been a while, the 2020 semifinals, 28-14 winner on November 6, 2020. So it's been 4 years since they've seen each other.
Isn't that weird that you've got two of the best teams and they just don't see each other in the playoffs?
Yep.
But that's exactly what happened. Here's some footage of Brock Christopherson just going crazy in the red zone for Sioux Valley, and he's going to be a really important player in this game because so much attention is going to go on Donovan Rose.
And vice versa. It's a pick your poison type of thing. One of them, in theory, is going to get theirs, and in most cases, both of them get theirs during these games in the regular season and playoffs.
I mean, they average 40.4 points per game. Winner gives up 4.8 points per game. Something's got to give in here. It's going to be really fun. But last week, Winner found a way to stop an electric offense from St. Thomas More. They held them scoreless. Now that Hammerbeck's back, I think that does make a big difference on their defensive depth, and it's going to be really tough to move the ball on them.
And here's something else that's interesting. The championship history. Sioux Valley has literally been to one state title game. 1988, they won the 11B title, 34-28 over Bonham. So this not only is Sioux Valley's first championship appearance since 1988, they're going for their first win since 1988. Winner, meanwhile, sets up shop usually in Vermilion most years. They are 9-9 all time in the Dakota Dome, 6-2 in Class 11B. They won the very first 11A championship back in 1981. Also won in 87, 89, 09, 12, 15, 16, 20, and 21. Their last appearance was in 2022 when they lost to Elk Point Jefferson.
Yeah, that was a memorable one especially for those Winner people. They go there and expect to win when they get to the Dome, and were upset that last time. This time they come in, I guess, as the underdog. They're the number 2 seed. They're usually come in as the 1 seed and get to wear their home jerseys.
The media had them at number 1 in the poll, but yeah, the Winner Warriors are going to be wearing not purple. Well, they'll have some purple on, but they'll have mainly their white jerseys. So.
Yeah, they will. And it's going to come down to who can force the ball down the field. They both love to run the ball. We looked at those averages: 272 yards per game for Winner, 250 yards per game rushing for Sioux Valley. Neither of them throw for more than 40 yards per game. Who can impose their will at the line of scrimmage and move people out of the way? That is Winner's bread and butter. That is Sioux Valley's bread and butter. And when we talked to Trent Olson earlier this week, he said it might be the team that sneaks in 3 or 4 good passes that can get this done because they're going to cancel each other out.
It's just that old theory that if you run so often, at some point, an option play or something is going to hit something over the top. A tight end's going to sneak out, or someone's going to miss an assignment, and that's where they can capitalize. So I 100% agree. This may be the team that completes 3 passes instead of 1 pass.
That could swing the game. That could swing the game, is who wins the passing total in this game. Who would have thought of that with these two teams that run the ball so well?
All right. What is your 11B pick? You get to go first this time.
Well, I picked against Sioux Valley last week, so let's just keep picking against them. Let's go with the Winner Warriors to get this thing done. They are just so good up front. Sioux Valley has monsters that they have to move out of the way, but Winner has been able to do that all season long. Take really good offenses and find a way to not only shut them down, but to shut them out like they have over the last couple of weeks.
Winner is as healthy as they've been all year. They shut out a St. Thomas More team that had been kind of Cinderellas, as I mentioned. The difference here, though, is that Sioux Valley's strength is Winner's strength, running the ball. And I think when you have to pick between Christopherson and Rose, I just don't think you can stop both of them. I think you can maybe stop one. I don't think you can stop both of them. This is ground and pound football. I just don't think they can stop that tandem in whole. So I'm going to take Sioux Valley. The Warriors have the depth, but I think Sioux Valley, we kind of talked about this earlier, I think Sioux Valley's more battle-tested through these playoffs.
They have played a really tough schedule, and for them to see Elk Point Jefferson twice and improve against them the second time, we saw Winner play against Elk Point Jefferson. That was Winner's lowest output of offense so far this year when they played EPJ. So you can't glean much off of, comparing scores like we like to do sometimes. Winner hasn't seen a team like Sioux Valley, that's for sure. They have not. So this is going to be a huge test for them. But I think with Hammerbeck back, that will help them so much to contain an almost impossible team to contain.
And I'll give Winter this. They have guys who have been in this championship game before. Just the thought of Christopherson and Rose on that carpet in Vermilion. I think
Rose is going to get something. He's going to break one at least, maybe
yeah.
two.
Again, we won't be surprised either way, but we have our first official disagreement.
All right.
I got Sioux Valley and you got Winter. All right, moving on to 11 AA. And we talked about them at the top of the show, Pierre. The number 4 seed. They lost 4 in a row in the middle of the season, and somehow, some way, they are back at their second home.
What
Andy.
in the world? Just absolutely flabbergasted by the quality of these wins that Pierre has been putting together over the last couple of weeks. They improved against Spearfish in the first round. They definitely improved the second time they played Yankton. And now they get Watertown. They've played them once this year.
Yep.
We'll see if they can improve on that outing that they had that really started their slide.
We discussed the semifinal, how they beat Yankton 14-9. For Watertown, tip of the cap, a nice send-off to 83-year-old Watertown Stadium, the official final game. They end it with a playoff victory to go to the Dakota Dome. 12-yard touchdown from Trayton Hemrick to Mitch Olson. Hemrick missed actually last week with a finger injury, so Watertown able to get by without Hemrick last week when they defeated Huron 35-0. And then a field goal by Riley Fisher made it 10-0. Cole Hansen had a pick six and another field goal. Brookings' lone touchdown came with about 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Just a complete effort from the Arrows.
Yeah, Marcus Fossum did a good job running the football for them. They've got Winchus or Fossum that they can go to, and last week Fossum had a better week. That is a sign of a good team. They've got so many different guys that can hurt you.
All right, so the championship matchup. Number 4 Pierce, 7-4. I cannot remember the last time we had a 4-loss team in a championship game at any level.
It has been a crazy year in 11 AA, and this
personifies it.
personifies it exactly. Look at the stats. 22 points per game and giving up 18 a game, and they're in the championship game. That is crazy to me. That's just crazy.
Number 2 Watertown is 9-2 on the season. As you mentioned, they met in the regular season, week 3, September 13th. Watertown won 28-14 at Pierre. Pierre was leading that game 14-7, but the Arrows shut out the Governors in the second half and scored 21 unanswered.
And remember, that was a tipping point for Pierre.
That was the start of the slide.
They started that slide, and this kind of broke their confidence a little bit. They did have the lead, and Caleb Lounsbury had been taking care of the football before this game. That's where he started his turnover problems as well. They couldn't run the ball in the second half, especially against Watertown. I think that has changed a little bit this time than when they play. But Watertown, they won this game. They went to Pierre and won it. They didn't let Pierre just lose it. It was a great performance by the Arrows.
And this is going to be the second straight year they meet in the playoffs. Pierre defeated Watertown in 2023's semifinals, 35-14, to, at that time, advance to their 7th straight Dome appearance and get a 7th straight Class 11 AA championship. You look at some of the numbers, and you see the depth from Pierre really start to emerge in the second half.
Well, yeah, they've had their younger players step up. Their 2 leading receivers, neither of them they're both underclassmen, Cooper Terwilliger and Carter Schiffelbein, and George Stalley has been good. But I really think when they need a big catch, George is kind of their steady guy, but Cooper and Carter are their big play players, and those guys have stepped up. Elijah Bucci, from just playing defense now to playing a lot of tight end, moving to running back. He's even thrown a pass or two. He's one of the most versatile players in 11 AA, and all these guys have been, like I said, changing positions. They only have 3 kids who started every game on D and 5 who started every game on offense.
Unreal.
And of those 8, only 5 have started every game at the same position. That lets you know just how wild this season has been for Steve Steele and the Pierre Governors.
By the way, Carter Schiffelbein, apologizing for butchering your name earlier in this show, but now that Jandy has said it, I know how to say it.
Yeah,
so
and that's how I hear it on online at least. So,
but
thank you, Brian Oakland.
Yeah, but it just goes to show you, just again, the kids are the one who does it on the field. But we've talked about Steve Steele and just the way he figured out something. He figured out a way to get out of the slide. I don't think it matters what happens in the championship. This is an unreal coaching job.
I mean, we will talk about that coaching job, and obviously they have one of the best staffs, but this team had to stay together. This is a young team that has the fewest number of seniors that Pierre has had in a long time, and they stayed together. And the senior leadership they did get from George Staley and from Elijah Bucci meant so much. And now Carter Merrill has really pushed as a running game, which they didn't really have a running game before this winning streak started for them. So just so many things kind of going their way, and the team staying together has meant so much for the Govs.
You have to wonder what they were thinking when they're 2-4,
Yeah.
and they're the 7-time defending champions. It's not easy to be, and again, who knows what happens on Friday, but to be the team like, okay, we're going to be the guys that lose this unbelievable losing streak. We're going to be the team. Like, that's a tough feeling to overcome, and I give them all the credit in the world for digging down and finding a way.
You're right. That is a huge factor that I didn't really think about, but those guys are saying we can't be the ones to mess this streak up. On the other hand, though, Watertown sees this as a huge opportunity. This is a team that's been so athletic. They weren't picked to do that much coming into the season. Actually, last year they had more expectations than they do this year. Yep. But now they see an opportunity against the team that they've already beaten. Now they have to go out and execute.
Watertown in the state championship game is 2-2. The last time they were there was 2013 when they lost to Pierre 34-7. Meanwhile, we all know the history of Pierre. They're 8-2 overall in the championship game, but they have won 7 in a row.
Yeah. This is a team that's on a mission as well. So, I mean, you talk about both these teams. I think you talk about two teams that are locked in, ready to win this game.
And for the Arrows, remember, there was a point in time during the regular season, during all that chaos in 11AA, where for about 2 or 3 weeks, it was pretty clear Watertown was the best team.
Yeah. I mean, they had beaten Yankton, the only team that had beaten Yankton in AA to that point. And everybody's kind of talking about Yankton as being that team. Well, they actually handed them a loss. They did take a step back during that Spearfish game because of mistakes that they made. And I know we talk about that all season long. They have trimmed up a lot of those dumb mistakes, but they cannot get back to a big stage like this and revert back to some of those pre-snap penalties that they have and some just turnovers and things that, they can correct. They have got to play mentally sharp. But really this game, and I talked to both coaches, they both agree. It comes down to who can run the football in this game. I know we've got good quarterbacks, but who can run the ball? And this year, Pierre has had trouble running it consistently. They've been better lately, but Watertown's been able to run the ball all season long.
Yeah, Spencer Winchus, just a bunch of those guys have been able, Fossum, there's just so many guys on that Watertown offense that can make plays.
Yeah, it's because of their offensive line is so good. Will Castle coaching up Micah Hawk and the rest of that offensive line, and Watertown is really good up front.
All right, it's pick'em time. I'm going to go first.
All right.
I'm gonna go back to my line that I said and give you all a little history lesson, an NBA history lesson, if you will. So bear with me. So, 1994, the Houston Rockets win the NBA championship. One of the best teams, Hakeem Olajuwon. 95, they struggle out of the gate. They enter the playoffs as a 6th seed. They are not expected to do anything. They beat 4 60-win teams, the Utah Jazz, the Phoenix Suns, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Orlando Magic.
60-win teams.
Yeah, 60-win teams in the regular season. They beat all 4 of them in 1995 to win a second straight championship. And the famous quote afterwards from head coach Rudy Tomjanovich is never underestimate the heart of a champion. And that is why I'm going to pick Pierre to win its 8th straight state championship. There is some magic there. There is a nobody believes in us factor that has turned into maybe everybody believes in you. It's the Friday Night Lights mystique. They've figured something out. They have been on a revenge tour, beaten Spearfish, beaten Yankton. I think they can get past Watertown. Remember, they were leading that game in the regular season before they collapsed in the second half. I'm going with the Govs to win 8 in a row.
I think Watertown has some great athletes, and they really have a shot here if they can execute running the football and just keeping Pierre off the field. However, you cannot go against Pierre and Steve Steele. I'm picking Pierre as well. Even if they're down by 2 scores in the second half, I'm not counting out Pierre. I think that they have a way to bring it back. Caleb Lounsbury has turned the ball over a little bit, but he makes some really good plays. Cooper Terwilliger is really good at catching the ball. George Staley is really good at being a possession receiver, getting them down the field. I think they can find a way if they have to pass and get back into this game, but obviously they want to run the ball first, and that's something they've done much better over the last month. Give me Pierre.
Ryan Deal asked in the live chat, who's the Hakeem Olajuwon of the Peer Governors? I'll go with Elijah Bucci, just a two-way player now who's stepped up.
Elijah.
Yeah, Elijah. Elijah.
Exactly.
I like that. Yeah. So there's your answer, but we are both picking Peer to make it 8 in a row. It's going to be fun either way. I would not be surprised if Watertown obviously won, but I'm just going with more. I mean, there's some stuff where, head over heart over head, what have you, but this may be a little more of a heart play, but Pierce got the numbers to back it up too.
I mean, I was talking about this before the show started. I picked Pierre at the beginning of the year. After they lost a couple games, I said, don't give up on Pierre. And then I gave up on Pierre. And then I said, watch out for Watertown. And then I said, watch out for Yankton. And now I'm back to Pierre again. So let's just cut out the middle of the season and go back to the clip where I said Pierre is going to win this thing from the beginning.
There you go. All right, we are both taking Pierre. Moving on up, or down, quote unquote, to 11A. This is our first game
class
on Saturday. Going over the semifinals, Sioux Falls Christian over West Central, 31-7. 4 Lincoln Prinz touchdown passes, 3 of them to Cole Snyder.
I was at that game, and Cole Snyder just got back to this game. He overthrew Cole Snyder for about 2 or 3 more touchdowns. The connection wasn't quite there, and there was no score in the first quarter. But by the second quarter and late second quarter and second half, they were connected once again, and that is where they need to be. They needed that tune-up game and that tune-up half to get right, and now they are right.
43 yards, 38 yards, 35 yards to Cole Snyder. So not just short of that, these were bombs to Cole Snyder.
Exactly, and like I said, they had 2 or 3 more bombs that didn't quite connect, but Sioux Falls Christian definitely wanted to get Cole Snyder reacquainted on the field. They fed him all game long, and he responded.
And then I mentioned Lennox and the Brownie Points. Remember, this was a scoreless game at halftime, 35-0. Holding Del Rapids just 85 rushing yards. And then Lennox's own rushing game with Ramsey Williams and Tate Gertis. Boston Katzer, 154 passing yards, a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown. That was a complete offensive and defensive victory for the Orioles.
Especially, we mentioned this before, but especially defense to shut Del Rapids out. And I know Del Rapids had been kind of up and down offensively here through the second half of the season. They had a really good game against West Central, and then they had trouble scoring against Sioux Falls Christian. And then, Dakota Valley the second time maybe didn't put up a huge number on offense again. So there were some ups and downs, but Lennox took advantage of that, and they really poured it on.
Your matchup, Saturday afternoon, number 3 Lennox at 9-2 against number 1 Sioux Falls Christian at 11-0. They met in week 3 of the regular season, September 13th. Sioux Falls Christian won that game 19-8 at Lennox, but the Orioles led that game at halftime. Sioux Falls Christian 19 unanswered in the second half. That game really was a tale of 2 halves.
Yeah, for sure. And there were games that Sioux Falls Christian kind of felt challenged for a couple of possessions, but that was the biggest challenge for Sioux Falls Christian all season long. When they played Lennox back on Lennox's home field, they really looked like the better team in the first half of that game. But in the second half, the defense of Sioux Falls Christian came out and really stepped up. So I'm kind of curious which team's going to come out, the first or the second team. There's Leighton Smith making an amazing catch in that game. They've got so many different guys that they can throw the ball to.
Braden Whitty had 2 rushing touchdowns in that second half. They got a safety. They got a field goal. Just kind of a complete effort in the second half after being down 8-0 for a high-powered offense to be down, held scoreless the first 24 minutes. Maybe that said something about Lennox's defense early in the season that's now showing itself here in the later portion of the season.
Yeah, they're playing well. This Lennox defense, they really showed that they can shut down this Sioux Falls Christian offense for chunks at a time, for possessions at a time. Can they do it for an entire game? That's the question. Nobody's been able to do that against a healthy Sioux Falls Christian team all season long.
Here are some of the individual numbers. We talked about Prinz, 27 touchdowns, 65% completion percentage. Cole Snyder, just a fantastic two-way player. Braden Whitty was the difference in that regular season game against Lennox. And then on the other side, you have Katzer, you have Gertis. Ramsey Williams isn't listed on there, but he's been really good on the ground through these first 2 rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah, he's been good on the ground, but Boston Katzer's 2,800 yards. Nobody's even close to that total in any class of football. The interceptions, he's thrown a lot of those in there's been some garbage time ones. he definitely would like to take that number down, but over the last couple of weeks, he's taken care of the ball much better.
Championship history, not a lot. Both these teams making just their third appearances at the Dakota Dome. Lennox is 1-1 all time. They won it in 1982, the second year of the South Dakota High School football playoffs, 21-0 over Belle Fourche, and then it took them all the way till 2019 to get back, where they lost to Canton 46-8 did Lennox. So the Orioles are 1-1 all time. Sioux Falls Christian 2-0, back-to-back 11B titles in 2017 and 2018, both of them over Bridgewater Emory Ethan. So Sioux Falls Christian making its first 11A championship appearance.
Yeah, exactly. It's really fun to see Lennox kind of regroup under Sean Flanagan. He's done a nice job of getting this team pulling the right direction the last 2 seasons. So for them, it's nice. And then Sioux Falls Christian, they've, like you said, they've won in other classes before, but now in 11A has one of the best teams they've ever had at Sioux Falls Christian. So 2 teams looking really saying that this could be our time.
All right, pick'em time. You get to go first.
Well, the first time Lennox played against Dells, they ran for 36 yards. Last week, they ran for 217 yards. I think this game is kind of the same. They want to run the football against Sioux Falls Christian, and I think they can. With the guys that they've got back there, they're going to make this game close. This to me, is one of the closest games we're going to have, and even though Sioux Falls Christian has come on probably as one of the heavier favorites if you're going to put points on this game, but in the end, I think the Sioux Falls Christian team is the team I picked at the beginning of the year, and it's because they've got the leadership and the dynamic players. Braden Whitty, Cole Snyder, Lincoln Prinz. Defensively, they are healthy, really healthy for the first time in a while. Jensen Pixler is back in the middle. Jacob Congdon has been one of the most disruptive defensive players in the state, and he's going to continue to do that. They're going to come in with the game plan to try to contain Boston Katzer. That's easier said than done, but I think Lennox is going to try to run the ball on them.
So your official pick
But
is?
my pick is the Chargers, Sioux Falls Christian.
Sioux Falls Christian. All right, you look at Lennox. 50-0 over Canton in the quarterfinals. 35-0 over Del Rapids in the semifinals. So they are combined outscoring their opponents 85-0 in the playoffs. The difference, Canton, primarily a running team. Del Rapids, primarily a running team. Sioux Falls Christian presents a dynamic offense in the passing game that I think is going to be a little more difficult for Lennox to keep contained. It's not going to be a shutout by any stretch of the imagination. Now, is Sioux Falls Christian going to score 30, 40 points? I'm not necessarily saying that, but if Cole Snyder is healthy, he's the best player on the field, as he showed versus West Central in the semifinals. Keep in mind, Lennox's season low of 8 points was against the Sioux Falls Christian team. Again, the Oriole defense hasn't given up a point in the postseason, but they face teams that are so run-focused. Sioux Falls Christian just presents more dynamic options on offense. They're more balanced between the run and the pass. I agree with you. I think the Chargers get it done. I'm taking Sioux Falls Christian as well.
I just have to add a few things that Jared Smith, the head coach for Sioux Falls Christian, said about this game. He said, Lennox is a nightmare to prepare for because they have so many different weapons offensively, and he knows they're going to need to slow down the running game, and they have to establish their running game earlier. Last time they played, they didn't establish the running game until the second half, and that's when they took off. They played better defense in the second half, but I think Jared Smith wants to establish the running game too. So for 2 teams that like to pass, I wouldn't be shocked to see a lot of running here in the first half.
We'll maybe see a lot of Braden Whitty early, and then maybe later we'll see more of Prinz and Snyder in the passing game.
Or this is a complete facade, and they have got a totally different game plan that they just don't want to share.
All right, our last one. 11 AAA. And amazingly enough, we've gotten this far in the show without mentioning the Brandon Valley Sioux Falls Jefferson semifinal, which might be
that
one of
should
the.
have been a brownie point.
I wanted to highlight the teams that were maybe a little underestimated, but
Vince Benedetto probably deserved a brownie point for that.
I was going to say if Jefferson gets a mea culpa late brownie point for the effort, but I said last week. And I have to admit, you kind of laughed at me. I said Jefferson's only shot was to get in a shootout, and they did. And they did.
I did laugh at you. That's right.
They scored 17 on the answer. They led this game 31-28 with a minute left. How about a shout? Actually, you know what? This isn't even a brownie point. This is a whole Sunday. Isaac Mitzel, the center for Brandon Valley, 6 feet, 260 pounds. Brandon did not kick a field goal all season long until they needed their center their 260-pound center to kick a 36-yard field goal to tie the game late, and he did it.
And on the stream, it doesn't do it justice of how close that thing was. It was a line drive just over the crossbar, just inside the upright. And eyewitness accounts tell me it was super close. So, yes, big shout out for getting it done.
The only field goal this season for Brandon Valley. The only one. That's I know teams don't kick a lot, but for that to literally be the only field goal you've had this season is unreal. Just some numbers from this game. Landon Delaney had 15 catches, 181 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Like, for a superstar, that's an amazing stat line.
Especially, like, sometimes we see those numbers in 9-man football, and maybe they aren't, great opponents or whatever. That leaves me speechless. Because
that's why he's a future Jackrabbit.
That's why he's a future Jackrabbit. But this is a team, we talk about MVPs. Landon Delaney means so much to this Brandon Valley offense. Their second and third and fourth receivers don't even take a lot of coverage off of him. I mean, he's seeing, bracketed
double and triple teams,
getting pushed off the line and getting bracketed downfield. So this is one of the best performances we've seen a wide receiver have in a long time in Landon Delaney.
Davion Simonson, want to shout him out. 3 touchdown runs in a loss for Sioux Falls Jefferson.
That was those touchdowns they needed to score. Yep. We talked about them moving the ball down the field the first time they played Brandon and not punching him in. Davion Simonson did that.
Briggs Knudsen ends up 22 of 35, 215 yards. So he threw for 215. 181 of them went to Landon Delaney and all 3 touchdowns. And then Levi Veskerna, 67 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, including the game winner in overtime.
Yeah, that was a fun game. Go back and watch that if you haven't. Tremendous win for Brandon Valley getting tested like that. Their defense had been so good this year. They hadn't given up, multiple touchdowns in the second half before.
I don't remember the number. I think it's somewhere between like 40 and 45 points they've given up all season. They give up 34 to Jefferson in this one game. Again, it just goes to show how much the Cavs improved throughout the season. And like you said, a tip of the cap to Vince Benedetto and Sioux Falls Jefferson. That was a whale of a ball game. One of those, it sucks where someone has to lose, but they do end up falling 37-34. And then the other game, you and I both thought Harrisburg would beat Lincoln. They got out to a 14-0 lead. 2 early Josiah Hines touchdowns. One of them came after a block punt.
Well, I was going to say, the first drive was really good for Harrisburg, and then fortuitous, block punt by Aiden Costain, getting them into a good field position, and then all of a sudden, Harrisburg's up 2 scores. Well, that's kind of what happened to Lincoln when they played Brandon Valley, and they just fell apart.
Yep.
This game, Lincoln found some fortitude.
They did. Brody Schaefer, 2 passing touchdowns, 150 rushing yards. And speaking of fortitude, how about Luke Kremke's? Got a sack on Sam Knuth as Harrisburg was driving, trying to get the tying and possibly game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, and he's a guy who sees so much attention, doesn't put up the numbers that some other guys do, but we know he's one of the best defensive linemen in the state, and Kremke's came up big. Ruben Daihe also had a huge game for Lincoln up front. Their defensive line really rose to the occasion.
That defense was the ultimate difference in a 20-14 victory over Harrisburg. All right, the heavyweight matchup. 10-1 Lincoln, the number 2 seed. 11-0 Brandon Valley, the number 1 seed. In the regular season, week 6, October 4th, Brandon Valley 39-13 at Sioux Falls Lincoln. This was a game Lincoln led 7-6, and Brandon Valley scored 33 unanswered to end Lincoln's 17-game winning streak.
Yeah, this was one where Brandon came into the game as the third-ranked team, and everybody was looking at Lincoln as the top team.
And Harrisburg is the second team.
Right, and then, this really defined Brandon Valley. They were so pumped up to coming into this game. Once again, Landon Delaney catching big passes, but it was really the defense that Brandon Valley found a way to really shut down the run totally. This was the first time Brody Schaefer had seen some blitzes in this manner that he's ever seen at the varsity level. Brandon just looked like a beast, and they came and absolutely dominated this game.
Yeah, 39-13. And after the game, Matt Christensen flat out said this was a statement victory by our team. And when you have that in your memory bank heading into this championship, I think both sides know for Brandon Valley, like, hey, we know Lincoln's going to come out even better. And then if you're Lincoln, we don't want to get embarrassed like that again.
Exactly. I think Lincoln took a lot of lessons. A couple of the lessons they learned. We have to find a way to get some max protection for Brody Schaefer. And we have to establish the run with Josh Myers. Josh Myers was not 100% that game. And not only Myers, but they've found a couple guys who can run the football now. So, Myers, along with some other running backs, Lincoln will find a way to establish the run this time, which they were not able to do the first time against the Lynx.
The last time these two met in the playoffs was last year's semifinals, and if you remember that game, Lincoln had dominated the whole season, and Brandon Valley came very close to upsetting them. It was a 28-21 final, but Brandon stopped Lincoln trying to run out the game,
That's right.
and then they couldn't quite get it into Lincoln territory and ended up falling 28-21. But that was a scare for Lincoln in the semifinals last year.
That was, and these two teams played great games, but look at this, while we have these stats up, look at Landon Delaney's
Oh my gosh.
70 receptions, 900. He's about ready to have a 1,000-yard season. Jack Smith put those types of numbers up last year for Lincoln. That is incredible for him to see that type of defense and put up 17 to 18 total touchdowns this year for the Brandon Valley.
And then I mentioned Levi Veskerna. He had the walk-off touchdown in overtime to beat Jefferson, but him and Gus Scott for the past couple of years have been just this great 1-2 tandem in the backfield.
Gus Scott stepped up last year when there were some injuries, and this year they've been able to use both of them. Look at them between the two, over 1,500 yards. I think this is a team you cannot take lightly. They definitely want to establish the run.
And then with Brody Schaefer coming in, sophomore quarterback, excuse me, he's had some ups and downs, but he's playing like a veteran right now.
And I'll tell you what, every time I ask anybody associated with this Lincoln team, tell me about Brody Schaefer, they're like, he does not get phased. This is a sophomore quarterback who walked into a quarterback competition with 3 different quarterbacks, won it, and had 3 or 4 of the best games I've seen to open the year for any sophomore. And he finished the season with 22 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He's running the ball for almost 10 yards a clip, 13 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's an ultimate competitor. That's what you want for a quarterback, and he can make a big difference in this game.
And if Josh Myers is healthy,
he only carried it 9 times last week, but he carried it well last week.
That can provide just another boost to this Lincoln offense. Some fun championship facts. They have never played each other in a state championship game in football, which I found kind of surprising. Brandon Valley is 8-6 all time, 2-3 at the 11 AAA level. They won the 2020 COVID championship over Harrisburg, and then the next year was the last time they were at the Dome, where they lost to Harrisburg 27-0. Sioux Falls Lincoln. They've been to the Dome 4 times, and they've won them all. 2008, 2013, 2014, and then last year, 2023, to cap off a perfect season.
Yeah, that's crazy. They had those dominant teams in the mid-teens, and then last year, one of the more dominant teams we've seen in 11 AAA. This year, they came back. Not a lot of people picked them to do a lot. With 2 returning starters on offense, who would? And they have exceeded most people's expectations. They have been really good. I had a chance to sit down with, or actually exchange messages with Jared Fredenberg this week. His keys to the game, they have to handle the pressure against our offense. They got to protect Brody Schaefer, like I talked about. There might be some max protection going on to make sure he gets the protections to let Akasi and Roach, try to win their one-on-ones on the outside. They have to run the ball and obviously limit the Brandon Valley run game. I mean, that's
easier said than done.
Yeah, exactly. And they need to tackle well and get off the field on third downs. Watch those third downs. If Brandon continues to convert some of these third downs, they wear on you. And if they get to continue these long drives, I mean, that's a bad sign for the Lincoln Patriots.
And then if you're Brandon Valley, obviously, the balance is there. Landon Delaney will get his, but if they can be balanced with Scott and Veskerna and Delaney, it's going to be tough for Lincoln to necessarily stop all that. But, again, Lincoln's defense has risen to the occasion like they did last week against Harrisburg.
They have. They've been really impressive to me. The defensive line especially, Daihe has really stepped up his game, and I knew he was going to be a factor this year, but he really has stepped up his game in the last few weeks. And then you also mentioned Kremkes, who's one of the best defensive linemen in the state. Good job on the backs, too. Gray has done a great job. And in the secondary, they've got guys, Edison Knoll with 4 defensive interceptions on the year. This is a defense that needs to step up, but has the ability to.
And then as far as Matt Christensen, how did he feel this game was going to play
Yeah,
out?
he again talked about being able to stop the run because I think that's how they won the first time they played Lincoln. They were able to stop the run. He also mentioned special teams intelligence. To me, that's like a code word for, we've made some mistakes, guys. We got to clean up some errors that we've made on special teams, and obviously they have to tackle well, and that to me is a direct focus on Brody Schaefer. If he gets breaks contained, they have to be able to take him down.
Absolutely. All right. It's our last pick. I believe I go first this time.
Okay.
It's tough. I don't want to put necessarily too much or too little stock in the regular season result just because I think Brandon Valley was so dominant and Lincoln, to be fair, they got punched in the mouth that game. They really did. But Lincoln also just kind of has that mettle. They've been here before. Even though they have a new quarterback, they got a lot of guys back from the championship team last year. I'm still going to go with Brandon Valley for a couple of reasons, but here's a big one. I think, weirdly enough, this is exactly like how last year went for Lincoln. Brandon challenged for the first time really all year in the semifinals after dominating all season long. Remember, Lincoln escaped that game against Brandon, ironically enough, 28-21 last year, but it was the wake-up call they needed. They said that repeatedly after the game, and then they answered the bell at the Dome. They blew out O'Gorman 31-7, really does not indicate that it was like a 45-0 type game. They really dominated that. Brandon, I think, is just going to do the same. I think they saw what could happen when their season was within inches, if that field goal hits the crossbar, within inches of ending in an unprecedented upset. I think that was the wake-up call Brandon Valley needs, and I think the balance on offense is just better with Brandon than it is for Lincoln.
Well said. Well said. I think, just to preface this, these are the two teams, I always have in my mind, like, what's going to happen next year? These were the two teams at the top of the heap for next year for me. This Brandon Valley junior class is unbelievable. You've got a sophomore quarterback for Lincoln, two awesome junior receivers, good depth in that junior class. They'll have more of their line back, but they both played well enough to get there this year. I think this could be the beginning of a little 2-year run of a huge rivalry. Just putting that out there. But I do think Brandon Valley will have a 1-score lead going into the fourth quarter and then find a way to extend that lead and get a 2-score win in this game. I think they wear teams down so well, and Lincoln's got a good line up front, great defensive line. Their offensive line has played well together this year for a brand new offensive line, but the Brandon Valley line is better, and to me, that's what wins this game.
So you're taking Brandon Valley as well. So among the 7 championship games, the only one we differed on was 11B. I took Sioux Valley, you took Winter.
Crazy.
That's
really?
That's the only one we disagreed on.
Yeah, we both took Pierre. That's right. I expected you not to take Pierre. I expected you not to take Hamlin. But hey, there we go.
There we go. By the way, we did not forget about the Wheel of Justice. The Wheel of Justice for the final time this season is going to be which championship game is going to be the closest. As the inventor, you get to spin.
This might be the end of it too. Who knows?
Which game will be the closest?
The one we differ on.
Sioux Valley and Winter 11B. That's the one we differ on.
That would be awesome, Dave.
That would be
This thing
fantastic.
is Nostradamus, by the way, so take some stock. Have fun out there. If you see me down, I'll try to be down to as many games as I can. If you see me down there, I always like to talk to fans. Come up and say hi.
All right, we got one Ask Jandy Anything from our friend Matt Kearney, West River. Morning championship games, like them? Should they start afternoon?
I mean,
It's tough when you have to do 7 within the course of a couple days.
I don't like them
I don't
because I like to get to the Dome early, and I always have to take my kids to school. And I
Change the schedule so Jandy can take his kids to school, dang nabbit.
But let's be honest, like, how else are you going to do it?
Yeah,
It's going to be awfully tough because one of those games you got to get three games in. So, and then USD always practices in the middle of it. People always ask why is the schedule so funky, and it's like it's kind of always like this. Some years they play 2 on Saturday, some years they play 1, 3-3-1, 3-2-2, and they mix the classes up so different teams play the morning games and the night games. But I'm fine with it.
I don't really like it as far as just having, you're going to have two games that are always going to start at 10 or 11 in the morning, which isn't ideal, but it's kind of just been that way for a while, and this will just go into a bigger discussion. I just don't think there should be 7 classes of high school football anyway, so
yeah,
it's too many.
Let's not start it at the last comment of the year.
We're
it's just like talking about politics and religion at the Thanksgiving table. No one's going to ever agree.
Yeah, so you don't want me to open the can of worms on how many classes of South Dakota high school football there should be on our last show of the season?
See you next year.
I was just going to say, we'll leave that. How about we leave that on a cliffhanger? No, I'm just kidding. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
To be completely frank, obviously, if you know us and follow us, both of us getting laid off by Midco back in March, we didn't know if we would cover high school football in the same way again.
What it would look like.
Yeah, we loved doing Varsity Sports Live for Midco with Jody Norstead, just covering North and South Dakota for an hour every Friday. That was awesome. And so this has been nice just to stay involved.
Therapeutic.
Obviously spend time with Jandy, who is the best high school football mind, period. I don't want to hear any protests from you. You are the best high school football mind in this state. No one knows the game better. No one knows high school football better. No one knows high school athletics better than you.
It's really, just to talk about that, it's really made me appreciate, though, not having Midco Sports anymore.
Yep.
It's really made me appreciate how much I really do enjoy the community of high school football.
Yeah.
And it is such a community of the coaches and the fans. And you get to know parents who have a second kid coming through, or maybe parents who had kids play 10 years ago that you still stay in touch with. So that's the part I've really loved, and that's why I do put all of my energy and time into making sure we get this as accurate as possible.
Yeah, it's been so much fun all season long. Thank you to Jody Brozick and Ryan Deal with 605 Sports for presenting us with this opportunity. 605 Sports in general, just great stuff on their website, 605sports.com. Articles, recaps, features, just a lot of good stuff if you love high school athletics at this area. To Hannah Rowe and Bruce Andera, who've been producing the show for us all season long. Thank you to them as
Making us look good, especially the last month of the season.
I was going to say, trying to make us look good.
Yeah.
Succeeding, that's in the eye of the beholder, but we'll see.
You look good, Dave.
No, I was going to say, see, they just gasped as if I was dissing them. No, I was dissing
you were
us.
literally dissing us.
Yes, exactly. You guys are
We'll
doing
explain
your
it
job.
later, guys.
Yes,
We'll explain it later.
Thank you to the Basement They Jandy Pants
exactly.
For being our Wayne's World-esque Aurora Cable 10 studio.
If you only knew.
If you only knew. No, you've done a great job. Thank you to the Wheel of Justice, our inside joke that we just turned into a running gag this entire season.
It was funny with our first lunch when we were talking about, ideas, and you came up with the Wheel of Justice. I'm like, perfect. That's gonna work.
And then you made the Wheel of Justice.
Yes.
So, this has been fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate you. Go watch. Yes, we appreciate all of you as well. Thanks for all your comments. Thanks for participating in the live chats every week. Thanks for enjoying us in your living rooms, on your laptops, on your phones, wherever you enjoy us.
Now go prove us wrong.
Yes, exactly. We did this show on a Tuesday, so if you didn't get a chance to catch it live, you can watch it tomorrow, Wednesday, before all the championships start on Thursday. That is a wrap on our 13-episode inaugural season of Inside the 605.
I'm just going to slip in a little. I am going to do a basketball show. It won't be live. It won't be the same as this show. But check us out during basketball season as well for more Inside the 605.
All right. For Jandy, for Hannah, for Bruce, I'm David Brown. Thanks so much for watching all season long Inside the 605. Take care.